Welcome back to Spirit Spells and Magic for an episode on the blessed Imbolc. Imbolc, or Imbolc as it's sometimes said, is our last Sabbat in winter, but it's for the purpose of introducing spring again. The return of spring and the sun. This is the time where traditionally signs of spring start popping up, mainly in warmer climates. Some areas in the cooler climates still have snow, but whether it's getting warmer or still snowing, we can still be prepared for the joyous time of spring. Imbolc is between winter solstice and the spring equinox, and in the northern hemisphere is celebrated on around the 1st of February. Here in the southern hemisphere, it's celebrated on the 1st of August and has been celebrated for generations going back to the Neolithic era. It was a celebration for the return of the sun. Daylight would now be getting longer. People were getting their gardens ready, removing the old, dead shrubs that didn't make it through winter and salvaging those who did. There are many theories as to how the name Imbolc came about. Many people say that Imbolc comes from an Irish meaning of in the belly, or in the belly of the mother, being that this was a time where many of the stock animals were becoming pregnant. They'd gotten through the harsh winter and now it was getting a little warmer. They were starting to frolic, and by spring the babies were being born. And it was the first time in some time that they were able to enjoy dairy again. Other meanings for Imbolc were milk and a time of cleansing themselves, as well as new life. Whatever the meaning, it all comes back to the wanting of spring. It was almost upon them and they were very happy for this time of year. And it was the new year. After Yule was the new year in the old calendars. For us, it's the middle of the year in the Gregorian calendar. So things like making New Year's resolutions and things like that, we kind of already did that back in January. But we can still take part in many of the other traditions of Imbolc, such as preparing an offering for the goddess Brigid. Brigid was the Irish goddess of light, bringer of light, and the Christians even nabbed her as well for Ireland as Saint Brigid. She was the saint of newborns, midwives, dairymaids, farmers, cattle, sailors, nuns, blacksmiths, and many more. With Brigid coming to bring in the light, they wanted to please her and also see if she could bring in some luck for their future crops and animals. They would make dolls in Brigid's honour, called Brigid dolls or biddy dolls. They would also weave crosses made out of rushes, which we're going to try and do as well. The dolls were made out of sometimes corn husk or pretty much anything that they had. As it was the end of winter, they didn't have a lot of fresh things to use, so it would be possibly that they'd kept some corn husks from earlier in the year and the last harvest, so as that they could make them now. And the rushes were taken from wetland areas, and they were usually pretty plentiful at this time of year. As well as giving offerings to Brigid in the form of the doll and the cross, or hanging the crosses up for luck, they would also put offerings on their altar, such as seed and honey, milk, as well as having some crystals on their altar, carnelian, citrine, and there are a few others. They also would put up flowers on their altar. The snowdrops in the northern hemisphere were one of the first plants or flowers to grow after winter. Here in Australia, I can't seem to find any snowdrops. They may be around somewhere, but we could also use dandelions as they are associated with Brigid and springtime. I've noticed in our yard a couple of these dandelions have started creeping in maybe over the last couple of weeks. It is warmer in Sydney than other parts of Australia, so it isn't really that much of a surprise that things are starting to pop their heads up. Over the next few weeks, we're going to put up some crafts and different things to try and bring back a little bit of joy around here and welcome in spring and the warmth. I've noticed in my front yard, my liquid amber has been very dead looking. So we're going to put up a bird feeder and hopefully bring in some of those beautiful birds that were eating some of the seeds from the liquid amber, but have since flown away to find food somewhere else. I've missed seeing those beautiful birds. So hopefully with a feeder, we're going to bring them in. We're also going to have a crack at making a biddy doll as well as Brigits Cross. And we're also going to try and get into the kitchen as well and do a couple of recipes for Imbolc. But first, there's one thing I had to take care of right away, and that's the spring cleaning. My altar definitely needs a makeover. I'm putting our Holly King away as very shortly the Oak King takes over, and we'll prepare something for him maybe around Beltane. But for now, we're going to concentrate on Brigid and everything else involved with Imbolc. Once we clean our altar, we need to cleanse it with smoke. Either sage, Palo Santo or a simple incense stick will do. Then you can get your besom or broom, or even just the motions of circulating that broom before putting down anything onto the altar. That also is a ceremonial cleanse as well. And then start putting in things that remind you of spring. Flowers if you have them, petals, other things that you have on your altar as well, and the different types of crystals that are associated with Brigid and Imbolc. It is also good to put in intentions relating to Imbolc, the newness, the beginnings of life, anything that represents that for you, and putting that intention into luck and prosperity for the coming summer months. I was finished, but my altar looks still a little bare. I've added some fresh flowers now, and I'm hoping to keep that up during the next few months. We went on to start making a Brigid doll or biddy doll. We decided to make it out of wool as we didn't have access to corn husks at this time. We'll probably try that for Lanasa or Lamas. I got my daughter to help me, and we put some wool, wrapped it around a book about 50 times, and this will be Brigid's body. Once we've finished wrapping it, we've got to carefully slide it off the book, and then what we do is we form one side into Brigid's head. Now in hindsight, we probably should have got a little bit thicker body and head, or maybe a fluffier type of wool, because the head was a little limp, but that's okay. Now to make her arms, we wrapped it around a book sideways to make it a little shorter, and we did that about 15 times. Now once you finish wrapping it, you have to carefully slide it off the end like we did with the body, and once you've got it off the book, you need to make a knot close to the end of one of the sides, and then you need to cut one of the loop ends where you've tied the knot, and this will be Biddy's hands. What we do now is hold tightly on one side, and with the rest of the wool we braid it along to the other side, and that makes the arms. Once we've finished the plait, we need to tie off the other arm, and then we go back to Brigid's body and we cut down the second end of loop, and we slide Brigid's arms between the two parts of the body, and that then secures that in place, and we tie it off just underneath the hands or the arms with another knot, and that secures the arms in place there. Now once that's finished, we can start working on her hair, and we've got a bright red wool for this. What we do is we wrap the red wool like we did for the Brigid's arms, sideways around the book. And then we do that about 15 times as well. Once we've finished wrapping the book, we slide it off the end once again, but this time we cut both ends open so it's just strands, and then we've got to take another piece of red wool and go through Brigid's head and tie the hair to the head. Now, it sounds pretty gruesome, but it's quite easy. We just put the thread through the head and tie a knot, holding the hair to the head. And then you fluff it out and make it nice with hair. It's not too bad so far for our first attempt. We've had fun doing it anyway. The next step is to get our green thread and then do the protective cross across her body. Around the waist a few times, and then over a shoulder, underneath another arm, up and then across the shoulders again. There was wool everywhere, but we had a lot of fun making her, and we think she turned out pretty good for a first attempt. And she will take her place on the altar for Imbolc. The next thing we decided we'd have a crack at was the Brigits Cross, or St. Brigid's Cross. Now this takes a little bit of working out how to do, and we watched a couple of tutorials online to do it. First you have one pipe cleaner or chenille stick, and you take a bent piece and put it across on a clock around 3 o'clock. The next piece you take and you point it to 6 o'clock. And then you take another bent piece and face it to 9 o'clock. After this, we turn the cross counterclockwise and put another piece to 9 o'clock. And then we keep turning anti-clockwise and putting another piece at 9 o'clock. So we're adding a bent piece each time to the left side of the cross and then turning it anti-clockwise. We keep doing this until we've added a couple of different colours or strands. They normally make these out of rushes, which is like a green piece of straw that's quite hardy and can fold quite easily. But we made do with the pipe cleaners. We didn't get enough green, unfortunately, so we had to add a little bit of white. But my daughter had a lot of fun making it, and it did look quite good. You just have to remember where you put the last pipe cleaner and keep turning the cross anti-clockwise as you add the next one. It was really symbolic, and we thought a lot about the people who would have made these back in the day, and they would make it a whole family affair. All the kids would be making them, and they would be hanging them up inside their houses, awaiting Brigid's arrival on Imbolc. And they felt that if they made enough of these and hung them around, that Brigid would give them their blessing, and it would mean a good harvest upcoming. They couldn't wait for spring, and they couldn't wait for the beautiful flowers and the food and the animals that would come, the new life into the towns after winter had been through and everything looked quite dead. But it's a nice way to think of those people from back in our past, as well as honouring Brigid. And we may not have a harvest to dig up in a few months, but we will be planting some seeds not too far away. And if Brigid would like to pass by our house and give us a blessing for spring, we would really appreciate that. So we did our best with this cross and with the Brigid Biddy doll to make sure that we're in favour with Brigid. And we will also be offering on the 31st of July, we'll be popping some offerings up on the altar. It is said that Brigid appreciates milk as an offering or other dairy, as well as honey or other items that grow and are made during spring as an offering to Brigid for her blessing. It's a wonderful thought and nice idea to teach our kids as well. Maybe not that, we have a whole heap of goddesses we've got to keep happy, but just a nice idea that a blessing will be made if we make the cross and hang it up in our homes. Once we finished the cross, we did tie up the loose ends. As symbolic as it is, when they make it with rushes, they've got to keep the ends together so they don't fray or break. With these pipe cleaners, we probably didn't really even need to do it, but it was a way to kind of tidy up the ends. And once we were finished, we snipped it all off, made it tidy where we could, and we're thinking about where we're going to hang this. Over the last couple of Sabbats we've been doing, we've got quite a few things in the house that we've hung up, but this one's very symbolic for Imbolc, so even if we have to take down something else, we'll find somewhere to hang this for Brigid. It's definitely worth giving it a go and putting that blessing intention into doing it. It's a fun activity for kids, as well as putting that meaningful intention into the Sabbat. Next year, we may even get some rushes ordered in and try and make them the traditional way they did back in the day, as well as they used to also give these crosses to people they knew who they believed needed a blessing too. We may make some for other people too. Now, it wouldn't be Imbolc without making something or baking something for the Sabbat. Now, traditionally, they made bread and they would use whatever herbs they had left over from their last harvest. It would be herbs, and maybe they would make butter if they were able to get some of the animals, the sheep or the cows, to gain milk from them, and they'd make their own butter. But if it hadn't happened, they'd have just bread, but they'd make bread and either plait it or make some other kind of design in the bread. But it would be for Imbolc and possibly even for Brigid too. We decided we'd go with Aussie scones. I mean, they probably came from England anyway. But that's okay. We thought we'll make some scones. It's just made with basic ingredients: flour, butter, milk, egg, and we added in a little bit of icing sugar, as well as a little bit of honey as well, just to sweeten it up a little bit. But my daughter had fun as always making them. We mixed all the ingredients together and also having some fun with the not cookie cutters, but we used a glass to make that circular shape. And of course, it always goes down well. I'm starting to think my family are becoming a little witchy too. They really get behind these Sabbats and are very excited when there's craft and food available. Imbolc is also known as the Fire Sabbat. They light candles for Brigid and for the Sabbat. In other religions, it's known as Candlemas, where they light candles also. But for Imbolc, we're going to light a little fire in our yard. We're burning some of the leaves and bark and one of the little pine cones for the leaving of Yule and the welcoming of Imbolc. This is usually done on the last day before Imbolc, the 31st, which is when I'm uploading this video. I light the candles tonight on my altar, and as I watch them, I'm going to be setting intentions for the coming months. I don't have a harvest, but we will be planting some seeds soon. I'll be saying a little prayer for Brigid and hope that she blesses us in these coming months. Now don't forget to like, subscribe and share if you're enjoying these videos, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you're aware when I'm posting more. And a blessed Imbolc to all. Have a lovely day. Namaste.